stress, we tend to think of it as just a feeling, an internal storm. But what if it has a shape, a measurable imprint on our bodies, a distinct pattern in our lives? And what if it's a coded message, one that it passes down through time? Today, we're going to explore the science that's just beginning to learn how to read that shape. For most of human history, stress was a private experience, right? Something for philosophy or just quiet personal reflection. But here's the thing, it's not just a feeling. It leaves physical evidence behind. And now, really for the first time, science has the tools to read that evidence, to trace its signature in our biology and in our behavior. We're making this huge shift from simply feeling stress to actually starting to understand it. So this brings us to our first section, quantifying the invisible. And this is really the central challenge for the scientists here. How do you quantify an internal, subjective state? I mean, how do you measure something that, by its very nature, is invisible to the outside world? This question, it's really fundamental to the entire science of stress. Just asking someone, how stressed are you, isn't enough for researchers. They need objective, repeatable data. And the search for that data has led them down two really distinct but complementary paths. One that looks deep inside the body, and another that looks at our perception of the world around us. Okay, so the first path takes us right into our own biology. When we feel psychological pressure, our bodies react physically. They release hormones, like cortisol. But here's the problem. Measuring cortisol in your blood or saliva only gives you a snapshot of this exact moment. To see the bigger picture, researchers in one fascinating study of civil servants turned to a pretty surprising source: hair. You see, as our hair grows, it traps cortisol from the bloodstream. It creates this physical archive of your stress levels over weeks, even months. A single strand of hair becomes a literal timeline of pressure. It's a tangible clue left behind by an intangible feeling. But that biological story, as cool as it is only half the picture. To get a complete view, science has to look through a second window, our own perception. Now, these aren't just casual questions. They are carefully designed, scientifically validated psychological tools, things like the perceived stress scale that give a real structure to our internal experience. And it's only by combining the objective data from the body with the subjective data from the mind that a truly three-dimensional understanding of stress can begin to take shape. All right, now that we have a sense of how stress is measured, let's look at where it shows up. We're going to start in one of the most common arenas of modern pressure, the workplace. And specifically, we'll examine a study of psychiatry trainees in Australia, a group that's facing this really unique combination of academic, professional, and pretty intense emotional demands. In interviews with these trainees, researchers found this really clear symmetry, this balancing act between sources of pressure and sources of support. The stressors were pretty much what you might expect, long hours, the emotional weight of patient care, and sometimes even aggression. But there were also these more subtle pressures, like friction with other medical specialties, and of course that classic work-family conflict. And then on the other side of the scale, you had the support from peers, supervisors, and family. It's this constant, delicate equilibrium. This quote, this reveals such a critical insight. It shows how even a vital support system can get twisted and distorted under pressure. Supervision is meant to be a safe space, a place for processing difficult and complex cases. But what we see here is that it's being consumed by administrative requirements, these WBAs or work-based assessments. A system that was literally designed for support has somehow become just another source of pressure. And this isn't just one trainee's frustration. This points to a really well-documented phenomenon in occupational psychology. Research consistently shows that when meaningful quality supervision is lacking, the risk of burnout, that state of profound emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion, it just increases dramatically. It's a stark reminder that the quality of support is every bit as important as its existence. Now, workplace pressure is one thing, but what happens when the source of stress isn't an institution, but a loved one? We're going to turn now from the structured environment of a hospital to the intimate chaos of a family in crisis. We'll hear the stories of Greek mothers who are caring for their adult sons with drug addiction, and this is the form of stress that is chronic, deeply personal and often completely hidden from the world. This is the voice of a mother named Aphrodite. Her words, they depict a home that is no longer a sanctuary. It's become a place of physical threat. Her role as a caregiver has been twisted into something terrifying. And her response, giving her sons money, it's not an act of enablement in that moment. It's an act of pure self-preservation. It's a truly visceral account of how addiction can shatter the most fundamental bonds of a family.
Faced with a similar kind of desperation, another mother, Hera, chose a different strategy: emotional withdrawal. And this isn't cruelty, it's a calculated act of survival. The wall she describes is a boundary. It's a way for her to reclaim her home and maybe her sanity from the chaos. That painful act of not inviting her own son to the table becomes this powerful nonverbal message. It's an attempt to introduce consequences into a situation that feels completely unmanageable.
And then, in the middle of all this, there are these moments of just profound connection. After this harrowing journey to get her son his medication, a mother named Anthusa hears two words from him. In the context of her immense daily struggle, that small acknowledgement becomes everything. It's a flicker of recognition, a sign that the son she is fighting so hard for is still in there somewhere. Her description of the feeling, that it touched even the last cell of my body, it reveals the depth of her emotional starvation and the incredible power of that simple thank you.
You have to understand, for these women, their entire identity had been consumed by the crisis. They weren't just mothers anymore. They were wardens, they were bankers, they were victims. A single moment of gratitude, like the one Anthus experienced, was like a crack of light in the darkness. It allowed them, even for just a moment, to reclaim their core identity as a mother. It wasn't just a phrase, it was a lifeline. These intense stories, from both the hospital and the home, they reveal something really profound about human endurance. When we pull back and look at the research across these different studies, clear patterns start to emerge. Across these vastly different situations, you can see common strategies for navigating prolonged extreme stress become visible. What emerges is this beautiful mosaic of resilience. We saw building boundaries with Hara's wall, creating that necessary emotional space just to survive. We saw seeking support with the psychiatry trainees, leaning on their peers and supervisors. A third strategy is reframing, finding a new meaning or perspective in a devastating event, maybe by turning to spirituality for solace. And finally, controlling behavior. And this is about recognizing that sometimes the only thing you can truly control is your own response. Learning to be calmer, less pushy, even in the face of absolute chaos. Now, it is absolutely critical to understand what this is and what it isn't. This is not a self-help guide. It's not a list of easy steps to follow. These are simply observations. They are a testament to the powerful, creative, and diverse ways people find to navigate situations that truly seem unendurable. These are patterns of resilience, not prescriptions for relief. Okay, so we've seen how stress is measured, how it manifests, and how we endure it. But for our final section, we're going to turn to a more mysterious question. How is stress transmitted? Not just through words or actions, but through generations, almost like a coded message passed down through time. To explore this idea, we're going to use a metaphor that's drawn from one of the research papers. It's called a cydal. This was a tool used by the ancient Spartans for cryptography. A strip of parchment was wrapped around a rod of a very specific thickness. A message was written along the length of that rod. Now, when the parchment was unwrapped, the letters were just a meaningless jumble. Only someone with a rod of the exact same diameter could wrap the parchment again and make the message legible. This ancient device becomes this incredibly powerful metaphor for how trauma can be passed down through a family. In one study of a family with a history of alcohol use, a father's life of struggle was like that unwrapped parchment, a series of seemingly disconnected events and behaviors. But his son, growing up in that same context, he had the matching cylinder. And as he subconsciously wrapped his father's story around his own life, the coded message became clear, and he began to live out those same patterns without even knowing why.
And so the science of stress ultimately leaves us with a deeply personal question. It pushes us beyond cortisol levels and coping strategies to the coded messages that maybe we all carry. What unresolved patterns have been passed down to us? To an outsider, they might seem like a meaningless jumble of letters, but perhaps with the right cylinder, the right tool of self-awareness or understanding, we can learn to finally read the code. And once we've read it, we get to decide if we will write the next message in the same way.